Hello, and welcome to the NOTstalgia podcast.
A podcast where we discuss the retelling or continuation of pop culture favorites as seen through a queer and feminist lens.
My name is Eric Lefebvre.
And my name is Jessica Tercero.
And this week, we are joined by a special guest, Kay Anderson of the Lost Spaces podcast. And this week, we're talking about the boys in the band. Kay, how are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you.
Obsessed.
Oh, this is what's happened. I told you as soon as we hit record, I'll be like, I have no idea what to say. I am good. I'm good.
Good.
How are you?
So, I'm doing great. It's Saturday for both of us, but different ends of the Saturday, which I think is very cool. Yes.
I'm on the different end. Yes. Yeah. So it's evening here in the UK.
And it's morning here in California, where we both are, which is, what a world. Okay, so not to dip into conversations about time, boys in the band, how are we feeling about this? Kay, what is your experience with the IP, with the play itself? Do you have a history with it?
So I went through a period of being not obsessed with it, but I was going through a period of just watching lots of like historical queer films, and I watched it and the documentary that was made in 2011 around about that time, so about 10 years ago. Not seen the remake, not seen it on a stage, but had seen the original film and went around calling myself a pock-marked faggot for a while because of the line in the film.
Yeah. Harold's famous, if anybody has like the most, to use his phrase, a turning of a nice like jab or a turn of a phrase or like just an absolute clapback, Harold is the one. He is so good.
Yes.
Really.
Jess, what is your history with boys in the band?
So I have no history. I had no idea that this film or this play ever even existed. It wasn't really on my radar. Being, my life for so long was a straight woman. But yeah, no, I had not even heard of this. And then when it was suggested, I was like, oh my gosh. And the more that I dove into kind of the history of it and like the time frame, I just became obsessed, and this was an absolute treat. So I'm very excited to talk about it.
Yeah, same. I've known about Boys in the Band. It has definitely been on my radar as something that I've wanted to watch, along with like the myriad of other like queer films that are a part of the like, the homework, so to speak, when you're like a 19-year-old queer kid and people are telling you like, oh, you have to watch this, you have to watch this. This was one of the films that was suggested to me time and time again, but I never gave it its time. And so this is my first watch of both the original and the new remake. And I'm really happy we're doing this because I am so elated by the overt gay story that this is. Like most queer media, most gay media, it'll like kind of tiptoe around the idea of like, well, they're together or whatever, and it's just like, you Nelly faggot. It's like just like blah blah blah. I'm like, oh, this is a gay movie, this is like a gay story. Obsessed with this. So yeah,
Can I just quickly hop on that? Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
I'm probably like completely ruining the structure of this episode.
No, not at all.
The word Nelly just was like watching it and hearing them use, like I can hear them say fag, I can hear them say puff, I can hear them say everything. The word Nelly, because I have not heard it being used in such a long time, it had such a visceral reaction from me.
Right? It's is one of those antiquated, like similarly like with the word queer, especially in the first one or in this like play, it has a different context, especially now because of its sort of reclamation and its more ubiquitous usage. But Nelly for sure, like just how it's so funny because it is that sort of just casual queer discourse of like, oh, you silly little queen, you Nelly little bit, and you're just like, oh, it felt so earnest, it felt so like realized in the way that like, again, going at Jess and I were just talking about this a little bit ago about like pronouns, who cares, like she, he, they, like it does not matter, like where is she, he's late, like it's so interchangeable and so fluid, and the way that like everything about their conversations are just so like kind of languished and open and easy and but simultaneously like both cutting and emotionally almost like manipulative. It's so there's a lot to talk about, and I'm like really excited about it. I'm down to start talking about the first one. How do you feel?
I'm good with that. Yeah.
Okay. Kay,
Cool.
are you ready?
Yes, I am nodding. Yes.
Perfect. Okay.
On the night of a one-beloved Harold's birthday, Michael, our hostess with the mostess, is preparing to welcome a gathering of his most beloved queer comrades in celebrating a dear, dear friend. As Donald, Michael's friend and companion, arrives to set up for the soiree, Michael receives a tearful phone call from one of his old college friends, Alan, insisting they see each other to discuss something urgent. Fearing the worst, is gay, Michael invites him over for a drink, truly hoping his friends aren't too femme in front of his long, straight chum. The party ensues. Hank and Larry, a handsome couple on the brink of collapse, arrive with Emery, a messy femme queen with a heart of gold, as Bernard, a warm, welcoming bookstore clerk and cowboy, and unexpected sex worker and gift from Emery trickle in. Oh no! Alan also arrived and saw the boys being femme and is now performing homophobia at them through violence and bullshitness. Ding dong! It's the birthday boy, Harold.
There's lasagna, there's tension. Is Michael drinking again? Suddenly a storm sweeps the party inside just as the jovial and convivial ribbing begins teetering on bullying. In a vicious and vile spew of unmanaged trauma, a wounded and vengeful Michael forces Alan to stay and has them all play a game. They must call a love of their life and rack up the most points for the most vulnerable call. Obviously, this goes terribly wrong and is only exacerbated by more drinking and raw emotions. In a climactic emotional tizzy of racial epithets and incredulously harsh banter, the party collapses and Michael falls into an anxiety spell. Alan slams his closet door shut, Emery and Bernard seek refuge, Harold takes his present home for a birthday romp, and Harry, in parentheses Hank and Larry, makes up. Michael heads out for a midnight mass and decides to deal with the aftermath of his emotionally manipulative tornado tomorrow. This film was brought to you by BetterHelp. Because everyone needs to go to fucking therapy. Oh my God. Okay. So let's just dive in. Boys in the Band. This play is, this film rather was a play, is a film. It is such a fantastic look into these lives of people exhibiting this like raw vulnerability of queerness, but simultaneously trying to perform and sort of like trauma dump on each other in this way that's supposed to be seen as like comedic, but it's not like they're doing it on I don't know. To me, it feels so honest in the way that it's done because this feels so real and like this feels so human amongst this group of people. Like, I mean, Emery being like using all of these racial epithets, and then the whole Bernard sequence where he's like, he can do it and you can't, Michael, and fuck you and whatever. And then like Michael trying to perform straight, like all of this wildness. First and foremost, I really enjoyed this. I think it's a fantastic movie. I think it's a fantastic look at all of these performative aspects of queerness. I mean, you have the relationship dynamic of wanting to be open but wanting to not be open, and then you have this like Alan figure who's teetering on the line of, is this about him coming out? But ultimately in the end it's like maybe he wasn't, maybe he was just calling a friend, and the what if of it all with the, it's just, there's a lot. It's so rife with like intensity. It's good. It's a good movie. Where do we want to start on it?
I do think that it's important for context of our listeners to understand that this story takes place before Stonewall.
Yes.
So you can file that in that section of history. But also, I think you were talking about the honesty of these characters and kind of the their situations and where they're coming from. And I think a lot of that was I didn't watch the documentary that you were talking about, Kay, but there is like kind of a like little mini documentary on Netflix about the new one that interviews the writer of the play. And he was talking about how every character was based on somebody that he knew. And like Michael is based on himself. Harold is based off of this person that was his best friend and that he loved, who was also the choreographer for like a lot of Hollywood
Hello,
films.
Dolly.
Like,
yeah.
yeah, and he, Funny Girl, he was the person that danced opposite Barbara Streisand, and he taught Natalie Wood how to do all of her dances in West Side Story. So it's like I like connecting things, but yeah, so it's really interesting when you're like, and I think that's why it feels so honest, is just because it's coming from a really honest place.
Yeah.
What I think is really, so when I went into watching it the first time, I had heard all of the negative opinions about the stereotypes that were depicted within the film. And I think what is almost as interesting as the film itself and the text itself is the time at which it existed. So when it came out on off Broadway or I don't really know how it works. When it first came out, like it was like 1968, and people were celebrating the piece, and it was really exciting and fresh, and like, oh, this is giving voice to these queer men. And then the Stonewall Uprising happened, and by the time the film came out in 1970, not everyone, sorry, I'm overgeneralizing.
No.
A lot of people were like, no, this is not how we should be depicted. We don't have like negative lives. We're not all filled with depression, and we're not all like, we don't all hate ourselves. This is terrible. And that completely killed the success of the film, which I just think is fascinating. But also, like, when I went into watching it, I was thinking about this, like, oh, they're all like stereotypes and hackneyed and like ridiculous caricatures of what a gay man is. But that is not at all what I took away from it after watching. I was like, oh, actually, I know all of these people.
Literally, I felt the exact same way. I mean, granted, I didn't know that history as far as like people saying the sort of hackneyed stereotype or sort of tropic affect for the film. So going into it, I was just like, I know nothing, essentially. Let's go. And I could not tell you, like, I could point to each one of those characters and be like, that was this person in my life when I was 19. That was this person in my life when I was 25. That is exactly, I've been at that party. I've been at that party so many times. like
You need to get better friends.
Well, this was when I was like really sad in my early 20s. I've been to that party. And it is like, especially when it's exacerbated by alcohol, you see these different sides of insecurity just retch out of like people who seem so like assured and confident. And then this moment of even just like a wince of vulnerability, and suddenly it's like trauma dumping on this massive scale. And I feel like the way that these characters really build that tension by like ribbing a little bit or jabbing or like poking fun or for the sake of humor, using that humor as a way to be a little bit like, ooh, like I'm going to get him on this, just like fun with your friends. And it really is it feels like such an earnest look into that sort of character, into that sort of a group dynamic. And I mean, it is interesting to hear also that like that 2-year span where it's no, we want to reframe the image of queerness, of gay masculinity. We want to like, we're not sad and we're not bad and we're not bad people. We're good, and like, let's show that.
Yeah, and I mean, so interesting that at that time there would have been so few depictions of gay life, and so every single time that you were showing gay life, it had to like tick so many boxes for so many people that it just became like a prison within which you were sitting. And nowadays it's like you can not do whatever you want, but like there are enough depictions and there are enough opportunities for people to see themselves that you don't have to take as much care, or you're not going to be as vilified if you get one or two things wrong.
Exactly. There's a privilege in being able to perform that authenticity now in a way that like, well, if I'm gay, I have to be the most perfect version of a gay man possible. I have to be the most model, astute version of this thing, so that way the public embraces me and sees that like we're not all bad, we're good, upstanding people.
Yeah,
which I think
I'm not like other gays.
I'm not like other gays, exactly.
The model minority.
Yeah, a model minority concept. And it really just dips its toe into that like assimilation into heteronormativity and arguably white supremacy and a lot of those aspects too, because again, how does that intersectional identity of like blackness or otherness when it comes to non-whiteness in these contexts? Because for a lot of these people, that sort of passing idea of like being the astute model minority for a queer person was only accessible because of their whiteness, right? Like, I can only be this and perform this because I'm white. Whereas somebody like in this play, Bernard, he does not have that privilege. And it's so interesting to watch his character sort of dissolve when he makes this phone call, because it's like, even though he didn't really say anything, because of the family dynamic of his family and this person's family and how they're so intermingled, even just like the wince or the whisper of queerness in this way of what if he's gay, look how devastating it was for him. Like, what if they find out? He didn't say anything even. Like, he really didn't say anything, but it's just, this could destroy his life, and he doesn't have the luxury of privilege in this case, right?
It's interesting you say that, because I do feel as though that was a bit of an overreaction.
You think so?
Yeah, I was a bit like, because precisely because of what you've just said, like he didn't actually say anything on the phone.
Yeah.
He just like was like, he backed out of it, he chickened out, and then he just went into a tailspin.
Well, that's because I like it, because it almost is this, he's obviously in his head, but there's the level of like, why would I call? Why would I call to check on him? Why would they think that I'm calling? Like, that overreaction of when you're in the closet, like,
oh, sure.
Like, oh,
they must know. They must know.
They must know. They must know.
Yeah.
I was looking at this person for too long. Fuck, they know I think he's cute. Shit. Okay. How do I back out of this? No, sorry. That wasn't, like, you know what I mean? Just the unmitigated spiraling of anxiety, like just the what if, like this can't happen, this will ruin me. And so I loved that because of how earnest it felt. I think in context of like these other queer characters feel a bit like an overreaction, but the more I sat with it, the more I was like, no, like if I was closeted, I've 100% been there. I've been this character doing something moderately queer and then instantly being like, my life is over, I'm done, it's over, I'm never gonna exist. At least for me.
Yeah, yes. And I'm sure that there are times, if I scratched my head long enough, I can think of when I've done that as well. But that would have been like in my early 20s or in my teens.
That's true. And he's in his 30s, arguably.
Yeah.
But there is also that, for us, especially now, because also as people who've grown up in the generation that we have and have also come out at fairly early ages, I'm assuming. I came out when I was 18, I think. So living in the time that we do, I do think there is that, like, there is much more of an acceptability to it. So understanding that this is supposed to be like 1968, where there is still this just like, even in your own home, a stranger can like literally just assault you and call you a faggot and punch you in the face, and everyone will be like, it's fine, he was just scared. Like, there's such a pass to it because it's such an acceptable way to react or respond to queerness. In that moment, I was like, oh yeah, I've been there, Bernard.
Part of Bernard's reaction, I think, might be kind of that closeness that this person is and has been to him in proximity to his whole life, right? He's known this family his whole life. His mom still works for the family. So, I mean, maybe there is... because I also did think that it was kind of an overreaction, but what you're saying, Eric, kind of makes me rethink it, where it's like, he was calling this person that sees his mom every day, right? That like he's maybe not out to his family, and maybe there's like some closer things to that and to that trauma. Also, he was drunk. Everybody's drunk, and our emotions are wild when we're out there. But you said something that was really interesting, and I think when we look at the depiction of gay and queer characters over, like, throughout cinema, and when they were allowed to be open and out, right? Like, historically, those characters have generally either been for laughs, right? Like, when I feel like when queer characters started becoming more normalized is when we saw them in like sitcoms and things. I mean, they were that comedic relief to kind of like associate, like, oh, they're so silly. Oh, well, they're great to have around, that sort of thing. But like something that we've, like, even in those instances, like, we've never really gotten away from showing queer trauma and like the trauma of coming out, or of, you know, just like what it is to be queer in these spaces. And I feel like that's kind of where queer characters have been allowed to exist, where queer is the very first thing that you know about this character and everything else is secondary. So now we are getting more, like, you know, in the past 10 years, we've been getting a lot more mainstream versions of characters that are a character and they just happen to be queer, you know, where that is in their entire character coding. But it's really interesting because as somebody that's always grown up in cities, right? Like I grew up in Southern California, right next to LA. I'm now in the Bay Area. So like to me, or to younger me, I will say like, oh, well, everybody's queer. It's fine. Everybody's around. It's great. But then like something that they were talking about in that documentary, which was like, oh yeah, like, you know, it's really easy to think about when you live in these cities, like, oh, we're doing so much better. Everything is so much better. Everything is great when you're surrounded by like, you know, more acceptance. But like this movie, even the 2020 version, can feel like, oh, well, this is a historical piece. Obviously, this is like, you know, 50 years ago. It's not like that anymore. But somebody in Alabama, somebody in a place where, you know, queer people are still actively being targeted and legislation is still telling them that they don't have a right to exist, where coming out literally is a death sentence for some people, or where they will be kicked out of their house and everything. Like in that documentary, they were saying like some people were like, you know, coming up to them and saying, this is still my story. Like this could happen yesterday, which is really interesting, that based on your geographic location and kind of the world that you exist in, like this can be historical or present day. And I think that
I always struggle with whether or not my level of self-hatred is just as a result of being a human being, or if it's because I'm queer. And I think like it's so hard to disentangle, right? But there's none of those characters in the film, either film, because they're essentially the same, where I'm like, oh, that would never happen now. Like, I think that all the levels of self-hatred, all the levels of internalized homophobia, like, they exist in the community. It's not, I don't think it's gone away, really, even for people that are the most liberated. Like, they're still, like, you know, I mean, anything that happens to you when you're a kid, that's just going to fuck you up for life, right?
Oh, truly. And I do think, yeah, you're so right. It hasn't gone away. I mean, for some, it's gotten easier, but for some, it hasn't. And I think in general, too, like everyone, and I feel like the queer experience is also kind of an ageless journey, because there's no like time for it. Some people come out in their 50s or 60s. Some people come out when they're 15. Like, it's not specific or indicative of anything apart from like when somebody is ready. But that sort of self-hatred and that like that constant battle, especially in a society that constantly tells you like everything is surrounded by heteronormativity in general, so that like that lack of seeing yourself as a part of the bigger picture is an interesting way of existing. And I mean, like, do you watch, and I know this is a bit of a tangent, but like, have you watched the show The Other Two? Have you watched the show?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember the episode where...
Oh, and there's a link, because Thingy from the 2020 version is in The Other Two. That, you know Thingy, right? Thingy. You know, in the second series, when they go on... Is it Pam? The mum. They go on the mum's talk show and pretend to be the dad and son.
Tuck Watson. Yes,
Tuck.
He's
what
in
kind
it.
of a name is Tuck, by the way?
I mean, it's kind of hot. I want him to kiss me on the mouth because Jesus. Also, casting, if he didn't look exactly like that other actor, that was amazing. Anyways, okay. So remember in the first season, at the end of the episode with My Brother's Gay, the song, they're at the bar, the song is playing, and the older brother goes to the bar and he runs into one of his old classmates. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you were gay. And he's like, thank you. And he's like, wait, what? Wait, no, sorry. He's like, no, I didn't mean. He's like, no, it's okay. Like, I'll see you later. That level of like, I couldn't tell you were gay as a positive, as this sort of casual degradation of feminist, and this expectation to assimilate into a sort of masculine presenting, hetero presenting character in society as just like a casual throwaway. Like, it's just because that, I feel like for a lot of people, is very much a part of it, right? It's like, oh yeah, I suck dick, but like I don't go to the bars, or like, what, you know what I mean? Like there's that.
I don't listen to Madonna. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, like I'm not like other gays. Like that whole conversation. I bring that up as an example because it was so funny, and I was like, fuck, that's so real. It's just like such a realistic, it felt very real. And I feel like this movie, these characters are kind of falling into those same tropes where like Emery, who is the most femme, this like absolute warm and bubbly femme queen, just like flouncing from room to room and existing in so many different performances of space, of joke, of humor, of everything. Arguably the most energetic character here is, because of that feminist, constantly belittled, constantly rejected by his closest friends, really. Like the whole conversation about promiscuity, and they're like, well, he's the most promiscuous. Look at this little queen over here. And then they like say it's like, well, not by choice. It's like, they're so mean. Like, Jesus, this is just a constant degradation of like who can outmask one another, and the most femme loses. Just as the game of queerness, which, I mean, at least in my early 20s, I absolutely experienced. I mean, I'm glad that there's more of a conversation around like the no femme discourse, just in terms of the feminist equated to badness conversation. I'm happy that that's like at least being discussed. But even then, again, that has everything to do with location and who you're chatting with. Either way, in this first movie, I really struggled with Emery, speaking of Emery, just in terms of the way that they exist counter to Bernard, because of like all the racial epithets and the way that they like actively dig. Like they get in the cab, there's the Chinese laundry joke. All of the racial noddings are kind of played for laughs, with the exception of when Michael has his sort of monologue tirade where he is like just super nasty. But Emery really kind of just like digs in to Bernard at like every turn with like, why don't you eat a piece of watermelon? Why don't you this? Why don't you that? Like, it feels so, I know they kind of address it in the movie about like, I let him do that to me. I do that to myself, but you can't do that to me. That whole conversation. I struggled with the Emery character because it just felt so like, why? You know what I mean? For somebody who is this like kind of warm, bubbly, like very earnest and sweet, and a little bit like the fun sister of the family, like it just seemed like such an out of character thing to kind of constantly fall back into.
I don't know if I think it felt out of character. I can see how someone who is the butt of everyone's joke and who is used to being the punching bag gets in a shot every now and then and like tries to keep up with people. So I can understand it from that perspective, why he would want to be like, see, I can be a bitch too.
Yeah. And I guess the only thing that he doesn't have, or that is different between him and Bernard, and again, in just a hierarchical sense, based in this time and in a white supremacist state, is that he is a white presenting person and Bernard isn't. So I can see that, okay, I get that. Just using that as the only ammunition against somebody to like get a good jab in.
Yeah, I find like, so the whole Emery character is so important to this story.
Yeah.
But I find like all of my own internalized homophobia comes out when watching Emery. And I'm not sure, like, I have a thing about loud people. Just in general, like people who would just like suck up all the energy out of a room. And oftentimes the most flamboyant person is also the loudest person. And so I find it hard to disentangle that sometimes. Like, am I like put off by you because you're just so loud or because you're flamboyant? Anyway, that's beside the point. But like the fact that so many queer rights, so much of what we talk about now has been won on the back of these flamboyant, loud people, means that like I just really need to check myself every time I feel like a certain way. But also just the amount of shit that he puts up with, like from everyone else, the amount of shit that he has to put up with, and like he kind of has no choice, or he must feel as though he has no choice because these are the only people that accept him, even though they're not accepting him. Like, it just must be such a head fuck.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Like everybody else can kind of pass as straight to a certain degree, but Emery's the one character that doesn't have that capability. Eric, we were also talking. So the cast for the 1970s version is the original cast from the play, and the writer often credits those 9 men with being just incredibly brave to do the play. So anytime that he like talks about it, he's just like, it's all because of them, because they had that courage to do that. But even within the cast, 3 of the actors were not queer, and one of them was Emery.
Yeah. Which I was so surprised by. So
I didn't know that.
So Cliff Gorman, who played Emery, was famously straight, and I guess also famously
straight.
Yeah, but in a way where, like, I guess that any previous works that he had done, he played a really good sort of like butch tough guy and like a very masculine character. So when they're like, wait, Cliff Gorman's gonna play Emery, are you sure? And he did, and this was a conversation about like that Jess and I just kind of touched on briefly. It's a well portrayed character, especially in the high femme, just a realized depiction of like this queer person. But like, how hard did that lean into stereotype, knowing the context of a straight ideated character? Like, a straight person created this idea and this performance. Yeah. How much of that is more of a stereotype than like an earnest digging into queer identity, right? I think it's harder because in the movie, like, I buy it. I get Emery. I know that person. Like, she's great. She's loud. She's big. Like, she does it. I know her. But knowing that like a straight man is this like, I'm just so taken by it. I'm just not taken by it. I'm just interested in like what that means, because it has a different meaning knowing its context. I know that in that documentary, they were also saying that I guess Cliff Gorman used to get, people would walk up to him on the street with his wife and they'd be like, we know you're a faggot. Like, who are you even trying to prove? Like, we know you're gay, sort of thing. And he's like, no, that was a character. I'm very straight. Which is just interesting because maybe it's famously straight, as we've said. That actually
not just a regular straight.
On all the playbills that he was ever in the bio, it says famously straight theater actor. Is how really? It's how they bill him for everything. Yeah, I just think that's so interesting. Like,
that is so interesting, and I'm really glad I didn't know before watching the film, because I would have been like, "Oh yeah, this is just too much. This is ridiculous."
Literally, I think I would have felt the same way. I would have, knowing that that's a straight man, I would have been like, "Oh, this is terrible. Like, what an asshole. Like, this is insane." But because there was an assumption there too, where I was like, "Oh, if this is the same actors from the play, like." The lives of gay men, and I feel like they're all doing a very good job at like depicting these characters. I was like, if they're in the theater in the 60s, I'm assuming they're all gay. Not to be stereotypical, but there is that level of like, I'm sure they're doing a great job at this. And so I feel like that would have absolutely changed my reaction to Emery, because like caricature a little. You know what I mean? Like,
but I don't. Yeah, So I have not come to this conversation thinking that he was a caricature. He is the one who is at most risk of becoming a caricature.
Yes,
certainly. Like, if you read the script.
Yeah,
but yeah. Hats off to, what's his name? Cliff.
Cliff Gorman. Yeah,
yeah. Like, hats off, because he did a good job.
He really did. I kind of want to talk about Michael a little bit.
Let's talk about Michael.
Our lead, our main character. Arguably, apart from Harold.
And so the thing about Michael, and sorry, I'm going to actually bring up Donald in order to talk about Michael.
Oh, do it.
Go.
I did not get that they were a couple.
I didn't either, but
I wrote companion in the introduction, because the more I spent time with it, part of me wonders, and this is one of the things about the play too, is like there's a lot of unanswered questions, like what was inscripted on the frame? Was Alan actually gay? A lot of this stuff they really just leave unanswered, because I mean, that's life. Sometimes things aren't cut and dry, and a part of me wonders if their relationship is also one of those things, because They seem very friendly. They've obviously like been very close for some time. But the couple of the lines that he keeps being like, "Am I going to see you next Saturday? Like, unless you have other plans." I'm wondering.
He bought him a
if
toothbrush.
he bought him a tooth. But part of me wonders if he's sort of like a paid concubine or like a paid.
Oh really? Oh, I just thought
worker.
it was. I just thought it was someone who didn't live in the city who like came and crashed at his house.
Maybe.
And he was just like, yeah.
Because, I mean, Michael doesn't have any money to pay him. Like, he can't pay him on a credit card. You know?
He might. Or he might just buy him things on credit, right? Like,
but it kept talking about how broke Michael was.
Yeah.
They did, but I'm wondering if, like, why is Donald, like, this man is so toxic and sad. And I understand when you love somebody, like, especially in this queer context, like, there is a level of, like, well, I'm going to stick by you and I'll be here and I will be here to help you. We all have our shit. But even at the end, when he just, like, stays there and he's like, I'm going to go to midnight mass. And there's kind of an assumption of, like, Donald's going to wait there for the couple upstairs and maybe do some cleaning, whatever. And he's like, well, I see you next Saturday. It feels different than just, like, a friendship.
Well, and here, I know there's a line that they hooked up before, right? Mm-hmm. And I feel like they kind of, like, explained it a little bit, but, like, when Donald lived in the city, Donald, like, one of the first people that he met was Michael. So I feel like maybe there's that sort of a connection, and maybe, yeah, I got the feeling that he stays at his house, but, like, he's also like, here, look, don't use my toothbrush. You have your own now. Like, this is a regular thing. We're establishing that. And he's clearly, like, fucking his analyst, right?
Yeah.
But, like, and he's, like, kind of in denial about that, but he comes up every Saturday for this and then just so happens to see his friend. Like, and in the conversation, too, where he's like, Donald's like, hey, I'm here. And Michael's like, what the fuck are you doing here? You're early. Like, well, I'm... Like
that's kind of why it felt a little bit more like an upstanding date that they have, like, hey, I'm not ready for you. You're usually here on Saturdays. And that's why the conversation with the analyst, where there's the assumptive, like, oh, they're fucking, that they don't kind of really want to talk about, because this isn't time for him to talk about his other clients. This is time for them to be together. So there's kind of like the eye roll, like, oh yeah, I bet he shrunk your head. He's like, yeah, he did, great. And then what else are we doing today? Like, there is that, like, quick dismissal of it, which just all of those little bits dipped me into that waters. Again, it's so unexplained and so unclear, but that's what it felt like to me.
I'll keep that in mind when I watch it again. So, like, maybe to see if I pick up on anything.
It just felt a little that way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I got that there was intimacy. I guess I just didn't think, yeah. I just then read an article saying they were boyfriends, and I was like, what? Huh? What?
Yeah. Because it just seems like in the way that a lot of gay groups are very incestuous. Like, even when they're arguing, it's like, he's had him. Fuck, I've had him. Yeah, we've all fucked. Like, who cares? Like, you know what I mean? There is that level of it, which I think is very silly, but yeah, exactly.
The tan lines on Donald too. I'm sorry, I do have to bring that up because, like, that was like, whenever, like, male bodies are presented, you maybe only see the butt, but, like, when female bodies are presented, it's like, fucking here's everything.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, I'm always zeroed in whenever there's, like, a naked male on or a male presenting character, because I'm like, okay, cool, are you gonna show anything? Do it, you coward. And we just see his butt, but, like, those tan lines were, like, serious.
I mean, I love that we see full cock in the remake.
Yes,
that was my favorite.
I was very happy with that.
I love full cock on TV as a general. Big fan. But yes.
I don't know. If it's flaccid, I'm just like, who cares?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love soft wieners. I think they're so cool. I'm really into them. I think they're fucking hot. Like, it's just so casual and so, like, easygoing. I don't know. That's my thing. Just like, oh, like a naked man standing with just, like, completely unaroused dick. Big fan. For some reason, it's very hot to me.
Oh,
yes.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, so you wanted to talk about Michael, and now we're talking, like, so let's go back to Michael.
Let's go back to Michael. So, because he's largely, like, the lead. Everything centers around him. It's in his apartment. He's the one who gets everything together. He's the tie for Alan. Even though it is Harold's birthday party, he's the pivotal character. He's the one at the center of everything. His story, I think, is so fascinating because of his relapse, because of his performative straightness, because of like all of these moments where he's trying to control everything. He's very clearly somebody who relies and needs people to perceive him a certain way. That's why we get all of this like credit card debt when it comes to like Hermes and these sweaters and these scarves and like, babe, I'm rich. Like, I'm walking downtown in Manhattan and I got money, when in fact he doesn't. So it's all about performance.
He changed 3 times.
3 times
in
yeah.
this movie. 3 times.
So it's all about appearance.
What, so you're saying that's not enough? You're saying that's too much?
He
well, I was
what do you
saying
say?
like I think 3 is like his minimum. His minimum is he's going to change 3 times. Like I was like, the ascots, everything. I was like into it.
We're gonna need a 7th.
Go on.
We're gonna need a 7th costume change.
I mean, if we want to be realistic, come on.
Especially
3,
if
is that enough?
Especially if it's your house, sweetie. You have your entire wardrobe upstairs. It's cake time. We're putting on a different sweater. Oh, presents, new pants.
Oh wait, we're
I
all
gotta
drunk
change
and we
these
want to dress
shoes.
up. Let's fucking go to my closet. Like
Let's rock and roll. It'll be fun. So his dip, you see him just unravel slowly throughout, and what a fantastic performance by this actor. Like, as he's confronted with these 2 worlds, I mean, what a great way to put this character in the most undesirable situation. Like, his straight side with this straight friend who is straight, big emphasis on straight, right? These 2 worlds end up clashing.
It's ambiguous. Like,
ambiguous, but in the sense that he's performing for this friend and wants to be still perceived as straight by this friend, regardless of like is he gay? Is he coming out to me tonight? Is that what he's here? Is that what he's crying? Regardless of that, there is still the like, hey, can you guys not be so fucking queer in front of my friend? Like, he's gonna get here. I need you guys to stop dancing. I need this, whatever.
and Donald says like, don't you tell me how to act. Like he's like, fuck you. Like because like he's like, I know what's at stake here. I know what to do. Like you don't need to keep telling me how to do this. Like who the fuck are you? Like and that's one of the few moments that we really see him kind of like push back against Michael, like was just feeling absolutely insulted in that moment.
Oh yeah. I loved how Michael was talking about his sobriety in this, where like his discussion about like drinking in general, where he's like, yeah, you just get up and have this and then you're hungover and then you do that and blah blah blah, I'm getting off the carousel, that whole conversation. I mean, it's obviously a very real thing, especially also me as a sober person of like 2.5 years. I absolutely get that and recognize and sort of like see that in that moment, but then also the moment he like grabs the bottle and is like, fuck it, I'm having a drink. Like,
you see
this is too much.
How I kind of took that was he was talking about drinking as like a crutch to like be himself, and like everybody kind of knows that that's how it is. Like there's the line of like, well, the right night, the right wine, you know, and everybody's curious, right? So they talk about that, but he in this moment, I felt like that was kind of him trying to be like, I'm ready to be myself fully and to be myself in any situation. I don't need a drink. I'm like kind of like thinking he's ready to do that, or like elevated himself on that level. And then the second that something happens or something goes wrong, he goes straight back to it, because no, he's not ready for that, because like he's still at the end of the day does not like himself and is ashamed of himself and his friends and this whole situation.
I mean, the way that self-hatred unfolds in this, where you just he almost transforms physically into this like snake spewing venom at each of his friends with that phone, like, it's your turn, and points and yes, and ooh, he got him, like, way to go. He like turns into this like just cartoonish villain almost, and even his friends are like, fucking stop, like, I don't want to play this. He's like, we're gonna play the fucking game,
and he's not playing the game himself.
He's not playing
it. He recuses himself from that entirely.
And that's my favorite part of Harold, is when Harold's like, he doesn't want to play because he's never loved anybody. And you're like, no, like just the perfect gotcha moment. I guess I didn't really, I just wanted to bring up Michael because I think he's just a great character in this, where you see the unraveling and then the anxiety spell at the end where he just collapses. He's like, what have I done? Why have I done this? And the sort of realization of the trauma he's caused on all of his friends is just, it's an interesting ending. Because even at the end, like his last line being, like my dying father who died in my arms said, I don't get it, I never have. Or I think something along those lines.
Yeah.
Where it's like, damn, you just have so much fucking trauma. Like, that's the last thing you're leaving with is like, your dad died in your arms and essentially said, like, I don't think you're a person. Bye. Like, ooh, fuck. Like, that's
Oh,
just
is that how you interpreted it? I interpreted that line as I don't get life.
Oh,
That's how I interpreted it too, but it works both ways, I think.
Yeah.
For even a straight man doesn't understand anything in life. So why can he tell you that your life is bad or different, or, you know, like he can't judge you for that? But then also what you're saying, where it's like he doesn't understand his son, that I really like that. That's a cool interpretation.
Well, that's so interesting. Because to me, I was like, oh yeah, it's very clear. Like, part of his trauma and part of all of this stuff is a lack of acceptance. And I mean, having your parent die in your arms by itself, but having your parent die in your arms and them essentially saying like, I never got it. Like, I never got you. And I never will. Like, I don't get you. That is devastating. That is like, that to me, it's like the bow on his performance, because it is like, this man sucks. This man is bad. This man is toxic. He's done all these bad things. And then suddenly you gain this insight of like this insanely traumatic moment that is passed off so casually in conversation that you're like, whoa. It doesn't excuse anything, but it at least changes the understanding of why he did certain things because of this, like, just he's literally just, he exists in this cesspool of trauma. Like, that's it. That's his life. And he's trying so hard to pretend like he doesn't have that, or that he doesn't experience these things, because he's an upstanding gentleman. He is just a well-to-do society boy. And it's like, no, you've got shit to handle. And part of that is this hatred for yourself. And I mean, I'm sure it's exacerbated by the fact that his dad's last words were like, I don't see you as a person. I don't get you. Bye. And you're like, fuck. I don't know. That was my
pick. See, so mine was like, life is futile. There is no purpose in life. See ya, I'm off. And that's how I thought the film ended.
I like that too, because that feels like, to me, that feels nice, because it kind of is like, oh yeah, life is, that's life. You know what I mean? Like, I guess that's life. And then, blam. It feels like almost kind in a way. Where it's like, oh, what a life. And then dead. Whereas the other one just feels so pointed and like, just sad. Because it is like, the line itself isn't like, I hate you. It's just, I never got you. Like, and it's not even like an apology for it. It's just like, I don't. Yeah,
because indifference is much worse than hatred, right?
Literally. The indifference of it, like, you know what? I never got you, and I never will. And then it's just death. And you're like, ugh. Now he has to carry that with him for the rest of his life? Cool. Cool.
Damn.
So whilst we're talking about Michael, there's a few things that you've, like, this conversation has sparked in me. And this is more directed to you, Eric. Have you ever been asked to tone down your gayness?
Yeah. Yes.
And how does that feel?
It's okay. Oh my God. I really hope she doesn't listen to this, but I really don't give a shit, actually. This happened very recently, actually.
Oh, wow.
I went home to visit my parents for my mom's birthday. And there's a new set of friends that my parents have. And I brought this, like, really, it's like this gorgeous shirt. It was really nice. It was kind of colorful and everything. My mom made me wear something else, but in such a passive aggressive way. And it was the most boring, basic shirt. And I know. And these new friends are like semi-religious, even though they're like cool. I know.
Should you say that you did air quotes then? Because people.
Oh yeah, sorry.
People can't
cool.
see.
The cool emphasis was in italics. I did a little air quotes. I know it was like a, hey, tone it down thing, which is so surprising because my parents aren't like that usually. Part of like their love for me has to do with how creative and big and fun and often femme I am. And it felt like such a stab in the throat. Like, oh, you don't want me there. Like, you do not want me to go. And so I went wearing this shit fucking costume, and I decided to not really be present. Like, you're asking me in this way, because I wore it and I was like, what do you think? And she's like, yeah, it's very you, which I was like, okay, cool.
Oh.
And then the follow-up to that was she brought a different shirt. She said, what do you think about this shirt? So it's very passive aggressive. I'm like, what do you mean, what do I think about it? Like, do you want me to change? She's like, well, I just think. I was like, are you asking me to change my shirt? She's like, yes. I was like, why? She's like, because I don't think it's appropriate. I was like, what's inappropriate about it? She's like, well, no, it's just like it's like a fancy place. It was not a fancy place at all. It was, yes, that is such, it's such a, like, it's currently, I'm still like kind of sitting with that in a way that felt so strange. Cause it's one of those things where like, I thought that with my family, we were far past this, like years past this. And suddenly this small moment of like, you need to not be as gay today. You need to not be as femme. You need to not be as queer tonight. It was loud and clear. And again, it's something so small and casual, but to me in that moment, it was very clear. Like, we don't want your gay version there. And I was like, well, cool.
Yeah, but it's like, it's small and casual, but also fundamental.
Fundamental,
like
yeah. And that's the insidiousness of often these like microaggressions where it's like, that is clear. Like, you're not saying like, hey, don't be a faggot at dinner. It's not like they're being this over, you know what I mean? But it is very clear, like, I got the message. I know what you're trying to say. Cool. And then, okay. And before we move on, fucking, I get there and my older brother, if my family listens to this, call me and let's talk about it, because fuck off, because I am ready to talk about this. I get there and my older brother's wearing a fucking flannel jacket in this supposed like fancy restaurant, like a hunting like hooded hoodie that's made of flannel, like not even a button-up shirt. And I'm like, I'm sorry, wasn't this like a fancy place? Isn't that why I had to change my fucking shirt? And he's here wearing a fucking sweater? My God. Anyways, shout out to my family.
Okay. I'm so sorry for ripping that Band-Aid off.
No, please. I've been wanting to like open that door for a little bit, so thank you. But yeah, I have a lot of feelings about that. It happens. It is the most insidious, shitty feeling in the world. It's terrible. It is so like demoralizing. Yeah. So like, and again, that's part of why a lot of this resonates with me too, because there is that level of like performance, like, hey, be less you. Can you not exist in this way here for a little bit? And it's like, fuck you. What do you mean? Like, either I'm here or I'm not. What do you want from me? Like,
yeah,
you know.
and that is why the character of Michael is so great, in that like he has to control everything. It's all about control. And so he is controlling the actions of his friends in this moment without really realizing just like how cancerous that approach is.
And I think just the moment he realizes at the end is so like his whole world spins, like everything comes to a head. He's like, what have I done? And he just, where you're like, yeah, you were. Like, cancerous is the perfect way to describe that behavior. It is this insidious, like, just spewing toxic sludge of nastiness that he oozes in these moments of vulnerability. And it's like, whoa, what a character. Oof. Yeah.
Oof. Oof indeed.
Oof. Okay, let's dip into the new one. On the night of a one-beloved herald's birthday, Michael, our hostess with the mostest, is preparing to welcome a gathering of his most beloved queer comrades and celebrating a dear, dear friend. As Donald, Michael's friend and companion, arrives to help set up the soiree, Michael receives a tearful phone call from one of his old college friends, Alan, insisting they see each other to discuss something urgent. Fearing the worst is gay, Michael invites him over for a drink, truly hoping his friends aren't too femme in front of his long-time straight chum. The party ensues. Hank and Larry, a handsome couple on the brink of collapse, arrive with Emery, a messy femme queen with a heart of gold, as Bernard, a warm and welcoming bookstore clerk, and Cowboy, an unexpected sex worker and gift from Emery, trickle in. Oh no! Alan arrived and also saw the boys being femme and is now performing homophobia at them through violence and bullishness. Ding dong, it's the birthday boy, Harold.
There's lasagna. There's tension. Is Michael drinking again? Ugh. Suddenly, a storm sweeps the party inside just as the jovial and convivial ribbing begins, teetering on bullying. In a vicious and vile spew of unmanaged trauma, a wounded and vengeful Michael forces Alan to stay and has them all play a game. They must call a love of their life and rack up the most points for the most vulnerable call. Obviously, this goes terribly wrong and is only exacerbated by drinking and raw emotions. In a climactic emotional tizzy of racial epithets and incredulously harsh banter, the party collapses and Michael falls into an anxiety spell. Alan slams his closet door shut, Emery and Bernard seek refuge, Harold takes his present home for a birthday romp, and Harry, Hank and Larry, makes up. Michael heads out for a midnight mass and decides to deal with the aftermath of his emotionally manipulative tornado tomorrow. This film was brought to you by BetterHelp.
So I also want to clarify that we are not sponsored by BetterHelp. I thought it would be funny because it is a therapy app, and I wanted to throw that in as like a people need to go to therapy. But again, not sponsored. Also, if you want to pay us money, pay us money.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're out there, BetterHelp, and you
I
want
know,
to
better if
sponsor
you're
the
listening,
pod.
here we are. We're discussing.
Eric's Venmo is eLefebvre.
Oh, yeah, just straight up Venmo me now. Just send me money directly to the source.
We've already promoted you, so I mean, like, really, you're just...
We're just waiting for the check.
Completing
We're
the
just waiting for
transaction. Thank you.
Yeah, truly. Thank you so much, BetterHelp. We love you. When you give us the money, we'll love you. Perfect. So we're kind of just like falling into the same conversation we had before, because again, it's pretty much the same film with a few exceptions and cast and what have you. Same dialogue.
Before we do, can I just say, picking up on the point you've just made about same dialogue, there is a line in both films that I think is very apt to this conversation, and that is, two's company, three's a menage.
This is true. Three's a menage. Oh my God. That was so. What's a menage? Two's company, three's a menage. Oh. Could not be more apt. Thank you. It's so true. Two's company and three's a menage. And here we are. A trois of us.
But okay, so with like me approaching this assignment, it's not an assignment, sorry.
I mean, it's a little homework. It's a little homeworky.
But me approaching this, I was very aware that my bias would be towards the original, because I'm always like, well, of course the original's better.
Yeah.
And then I was like, and you know, Ryan Murphy, he's just going to fuck it up. He's just going to make it some kind of Ryan Murphy type thing.
I was so ready for that too.
And then I watched it, and it was basically the exact same film, and I was like, why didn't they even try?
Yeah, I especially with Ryan Murphy as an executive producer, I did think that he was going to absolutely wreck the shit out of it. Like, not like I thought he was going to do something so bombastic and like silly in this way that's like, get it? It's camp. And you're like, are you sure? I thought he was going to do that with this. And again, it's pretty much a cut and dry, we're watching the same play. I mean, again, large exceptions being some of the racial jokes were pulled. Some of the dialogue was kind of reconfigured. I think they gave Cowboy a few more lines. They're just like little itty bitty stuff. And I think some of the references they kind of switched up on us too. But overall, it's like the exact same script.
Yeah, and basically the main difference, I think, is just the tonal shifts are more apparent. Like I said, when Michael goes for the drink, that's more apparent. So there's these things that before were just kind of existed in the film where they called much more attention to this, which I think was for maybe a more modern audience or a wider audience, you know, because it's very intentional with like, this is how you're supposed to feel in this moment. And this is what you need to pay attention to. So it felt like it was kind of holding your hand a little bit more.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I liked the portrayal of Harry, Hank, and Larry because these two men are a couple in real life, which I think is fantastic. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
They've been longtime partners, Tuck Watkins and Andrew Rannells. I think they've been dating for quite a long time. And I love that they are regularly in shows together. Like, do you guys watch Black Monday?
Mm-mm.
They have an affair together in the show Black Monday, and like they're regularly in stuff together where they're like both gay and both in love, and you're like, you know what, this is like actually really cute because they're like together in real life. I don't know.
I love that.
That sounds awful.
I love it. I'm like, you guys are so cute, and I think they're both sluts too, which we're obsessed with. I liked the depiction of these characters in this. Some of the line readings, like, I liked them in this maybe as much or if not more than the other actors, but apart from them and Emery, I think everything else didn't work for me just in terms of the characters. Like Zachary Quinto as Harold, didn't buy it, unfortunately.
Okay, so I felt like watching the first one, not knowing who was in the second one, right? The original Harold, I was like, the dude from Big Bang Theory, like, based his whole life, his whole persona on this guy here. Because, like, the way that he talks in his cadence, right? Yeah. And I was like, this is fucking him. This is Sheldon, who's given nerds a bad name. Like, you know, like, that whole show is problematic. But then seeing him in this one, not playing that character, fucked me up so bad. I was like, okay. Like, okay, because I was like, okay, well, but Zachary Quinto isn't Jewish either, right? So he's supposed to be playing a Jewish person, which is because that is like essential to Harold's character too. So I was like, okay, is he Jewish? And I didn't know, so I looked it up, and it was like, is Zachary Quinto Jewish? And like the Google search, you know how usually it gives you like a paragraph or something? It just said no.
Nope.
So I was like, okay, why did you do that? Why? Because like, I feel like Sheldon, I'm just going to call him, I feel like him carrying the movie like really took me out of it because I'm so used to seeing him as that character. And I feel like if he had played Harold, I feel like that would have at least made more sense to me because just his style of acting and his line delivery and everything would also be a tribute to the person, I forget his name, that first played Harold. So like, to me, that just fucked me up.
See, I've never watched The Big Bang Theory, so like he didn't mean anything to me in that role. I guess I was just thinking that like, oh, all of these actors have been in Ryan Murphy productions before. He just like has them in his Rolodex.
He's pulling his gaggle of gays.
Yeah.
Yeah. His gay Rolodex. He's actually not even texting them. He's just finding them on Grindr and being like, "Hey, Queen, check out the script." Like, "Hey, do you want to work on this?" Like, "Oh, for sure."
Which
sorry,
is like, it's kind of nice, right?
Sorry, Tuck Watkins is on Scruff. He's not on Grindr. Sorry, let me clear the air on that. My bad.
Oh wait, okay. Well, let's be. Well, I feel like
most of them would be
Alan
on
would be on Scruff.
Alan would be on Scruff, and you know what? He's so cute. Like he is such a little daddy, and I'm like really into him.
Well, Alan in the 2020 version.
In the 2020 version, yeah.
I need to look him up.
Because he's got like these like really soft, sad eyes, and like, oh my god. I mean, granted, fuck him completely, this character, like for being this homophobic piece of shit.
But hang on, we just need to like dig into this a bit more. So you like sad
dads,
like people that you can take under your wing and like nurture.
Well, kind of like there's a level of like in sadness to me, like especially with men, there's like a softness, and that softness is very attractive to me, especially when it's coming from somebody who looks like a literal dad or like a father. I'm like, ooh, obviously that's my own daddy issues, like for sure. Like that's not even a conversation, but I'm just like really attracted to that.
Well, see, I feel as though the Alan in the 1970 version was like sadder. Like he had more of that aura.
But to me, it didn't.
But he was less daddy. Okay.
He was less daddy.
Okay.
And I think ultimately that's what it comes down to. He was less daddy.
It doesn't matter how sad you are. You got to be a daddy. First and foremost. Yeah. All right, cool.
100%. Daddy.
We're going to put that on a shirt for you.
Thank you so much. Okay. I didn't really buy most of these. I mean, the characters that I did buy that I really kind of leaned into. I loved this cowboy I thought this cowboy was very
Yes.
I thought he was exactly the same actor.
Oh, right? Oh, okay.
I was like, you look exactly the same, except
How-
your hair isn't as tall.
Like, how did you get this guy? Like, what? Yeah. So, I mean, I liked his delivery in this. I thought it was, like, very cool. Like, the aloofness of the first one worked, but then this one being, like, aloof in a more confident way worked. And I was like, oh, like, different kind of interpretations of this character. I was really into this one. Emery, played by Robin De Jesus, I loved, because to me, this Emery I felt the warmth from him and the sort of needed confidence to be such a high femme in the society as it is. And they did pull out a lot of the racial tithings, or like the little racial jabs that he has towards Bernard out of this, which just made him a much more likable character. And I think that charm, it takes away the grit for sure, because I know that the grit of the first one is like really intentional in the way that it's like, we're all messy. And like we talked about before, his dynamic with Bernard specifically, how it is like the low rung on the call sheet or what have you. They're kind of just jabbing at each other. Taking that out, though, it does provide this context for warmth and nurture that makes me, I guess, resonate with Emery more so here.
I did also like the apology when Bernard was like, this is how this feels. It always feels awful, but like, and he's like bearing his soul to everybody. And Emery, like when he looks at him, he's like, I am so sorry. I had no idea. I will never do this again to you.
It felt, my biggest note with this one is like, oh, they actually like each other. Like in the first one, there's a level where I'm like, I mean, obviously they're close, and obviously it's kind of like, this is my survival group, these are my friends, this is my family. There are moments where I'm like, does anybody here even like each other? I feel like everyone is just like so secretly rooting for each other's demise, but nobody's talking about it. Whereas in this one, some of that is still present, especially within Michael, but you see some true, genuine moments of like, oh wow, they love each other. Like in the first one, the moment that I recognize that as one of the only ones was the present from Michael to Harold with the frame, where he reads it and they're like, what does it say? And then he just takes a beat and it's like something personal or something special. Like he says something and Harold looks at Michael, even though they've just got into kind of like a tit for tat moment. The way that Harold looks at Michael in that first one, you're like, yeah, like they mean a lot to each other no matter what is happening here.
Yeah. And the way Michael looks at him too.
And the way Michael looks at Harold.
Before it was just kind of like, oh, well, this is my present. And you can see like Michael just kind of like hanging on his reaction. Like everything, like the whole night rides on, like nothing else exists in this moment. So I thought that was cool. Yeah.
And I think like that moment worked in both, but it just, in the first one, that's one of the only moments that I like kind of clock as like like this level of deep earnestness when it comes to like love and friendship and companionship in a way that feels very organic. Whereas in the new one, even though it is a little bit forced, there is a lot more of that warmth present, which just to me as a viewer, I buy it harder in this one that they are a group of friends who like earnestly do care about each other, despite the fights, despite the bickering, despite the spew of toxicness on one another. In this one, it did feel like they're gonna get through this. Like they're there for one another in a way that the first one just felt like, ooh, these queers hate each other.
I felt like in the first one they were all just kind of stuck with each other because like again, like for the moment, and it was like actually really dangerous to be queer like publicly. Yeah. I got the vibe that you stick with and around the people that you know, that's what I read. So in this one, it felt more, it felt a little bit more earnest in terms of their relationships and like their relationships as a group, and also like the coupling of each person. Like I felt like Emery and Bernard were closer. I felt the depth for Harry. I kept calling them that, so I was like so stoked that you put it in the in the intros. But like I really liked the depth that we got for both of those characters, and I liked that like that we started off with the with more context for kind of like we started off with their tension, right? And it was very
Yes.
clear and apparent why that tension was there, and that we were able to see more of Hank's struggle trying to fit in and trying to like find his place, and then also being confronted with Alan. Like I think those relationships worked a little bit better for me.
How are you feeling, Kay?
Ooh, disagree with us, please.
I don't know if I disagree necessarily. I think, like, for me, so I'm the kind of person who's more interested in stories about friendship than I am about romantic relationships. And so for me, like, this is all so fascinating because no one can hurt you as much as the casual cruelty from a friend. And so from that perspective, the first one, I didn't really care that it seemed like they didn't like each other because there were those small clues that they had this real intimacy. So I didn't really kind of need that big show of like camaraderie and friendship and like we're in this together. And then so I guess maybe I just wasn't looking at the second one through any kind of lens where I wanted them to like each other because I wanted that tension. I don't know.
Yeah, I get that as well. Because I mean, granted, the base text it's rooted in that tension. It's rooted in these really like rough character studies, right? So like, I just personally resonated with it more, just in the context of like, you got to give me a little bit more good than this overwhelming bad that I'm seeing. That doesn't necessarily mean that like because I love the first one. I think it's really fantastic, and I love the way that it's done. But if we're putting one and one together, the difference in that I find fascinating and such an interesting way to use the same text, but in a new way, right? Because it's the same words, but you're just portraying it differently, and in this way, creating more of a warmth with the same base text.
See, okay, so in my notes, I had written that there was less tension in the remake. Like,
Yes.
I did not feel as tense, and I did not feel as like bought into the drama at the end. And I had been attributing that to the cutaways that they were using. So they were doing like flashbacks of like, this is happening now, this is happening now. And so I was saying that was taking me out of the fantasy. I didn't say that. I didn't just say
it.
that.
I love it.
Like, okay.
I love it.
It was taking me out of the fantasy.
Yeah.
And
okay, we're on Drag Race.
maybe it was because they liked each other more. It's like the stakes aren't as high. Who gives a shit?
And that is kind of I that seems like fairly inarguable too. Like I agree completely because like the stakes just weren't as high because of the way that they resolve that warmth within the friendship. Because again, in the first one, it is just like you could cut that shit with a knife. Like, do they even like each other? Like, Jesus Christ, they were just destroying each other at every moment, any possible time to just be like, you're a dumb piece of shit and I hate you. It's like, I'm going to say it and I'm going to do it. And I hope this stings, you silly little gay. Like, ooh, it's just so, it's rough, which makes for a better drama. And I think you're also right just in terms of the cutaways did change the dynamic of the story because, again, it is written like a play. So in the first one, it is very much like we're not leaving the space. Like the times that we leave the space are at the beginning when we're setting up the conversation. You're buying the lobster. You're at the shop. You're at your job. You're getting the books. You're getting ready. We're seeing these sort of vignettes of life in the big city in 1968. We land back at the house. We don't leave the house until the door closes at the end and he leaves. That's just it. Apart from cutting away to say a phone call, maybe. But even then, the phone call is still a part of the house setting. It's happening in that house. So we are locked in that place. And the storm, we're not leaving. Nobody's leaving, as he says. That sort of bottling of the tension also heightens that tension because of it has nowhere to go. We have nowhere to go as the audience. We can't escape this. We know we're stuck here with these fucked up people, and we have to just be here until it ends. Shit.
And we have to watch the literal storm inside of the house while it's raging outside, right?
Exactly.
Michael is just thunderous.
And whilst we're at it, someone left the cake out in the rain.
They did, and they left the lasagna.
Yeah, I was sad.
Like, that lasagna looks so good.
Okay, but I'm using the lyric from MacArthur Park. You get that right.
No.
Oh, shit. All right. Well,
Wait,
someone
I'm
listening
sorry.
will get this.
Who is this?
So there is a song called MacArthur Park, and the chorus is, someone left the cake out in the rain.
Oh.
I'm gonna look this up
It's
immediately. once we get
okay.
off this
I was
call.
just like, what?
I'm
It's
so
a Donna
sorry.
Summer. It's just.
I'm
okay.
so
I feel
sorry that
ashamed as a musician right now.
I'm so sorry that in this context you were the cake and we were the ones leaving you out in the rain.
I mean, your listeners are going to be listening to this and just like, those dumb fucks.
They're going to throw their phones. They're going to be screaming. Are you fucking kidding me?
That classic song you just. Yeah.
You fools. Yes. So I'm gonna write
Okay,
a song
sorry.
called I'm gonna write a song called "Lasagna Out in the Rain."
Speaking of tension,
Speaking of tension,
No,
but
rhymes
it
with
just
lasagna?
Lasagna?
My mama. No.
Bologna. I don't know. I just mispronounced bologna. Okay, back to the tension. Yeah, so I just liked. I mean, granted, I would have liked a little bit more of the tension in this one, but again, that comes with the territory of them not liking each other. I thought the cutaways were like an interesting way to add a little bit of texture. I don't think they worked great, but again,
But you got to see Soft Peen.
I got to see soft peen.
yes.
Yeah.
I got to see buoyant cock in the pool several times, and we got to see a little bathhouse action, which iconic. Oh, do you guys want to talk about the big punch? Like the big climactic moment with Alan.
Yeah.
So
I feel like Alan in general, I think if we're going to talk about that, we need to kind of go back to whenever he like inserts himself into this.
Yeah.
Because I think his dialogue is largely the same in both. And there's something where he comes in and immediately, like any queer joy that was there, they were all dancing and having a wonderful time, fucking ends, right? So in the presence of straightness, queerness is not allowed to exist or to be good. So then, like, when he's like offended and he goes back up to the room with Michael, right? He makes a comment about saying Hank is handsome, right? And then saying he likes everyone except Emery, right? And he starts saying some really awful things about him. And he's like, oh, well, I'm so sorry, because I feel like he caught himself being like, oh, well, Hank, oh, but like Emery, I mean, like, no, I mean, like, he's like real bad and like real, I mean, sorry, it's just what he is. And he's like, me, like, I don't care as long as you don't force your ways on anyone or doing anything in public, right?
Yeah.
And then
that old adage.
He digs deeper into that, where he's like, but I mean, you got to admit, right? He's trying to like, which, like, and that whole line where he said, as long as you don't force your ways on anyone or aren't doing it in public, because this space, he was not invited here. He was not allowed. He forced himself in here, into this conversation and into this area. And then he's like, well, I mean, don't do this in public or in front of anybody. Don't force your way on anybody. It's like, by being here in this space, in a place that you were not wanted and you self-invited yourself, you are doing exactly what you're telling other people not to do, you know, and and then there's the conversation about like when he's like, oh, well, Hank is the straight one, so I get him, right? And I think Hank is a really interesting character, but like he's fucking shook when he sees that, like, oh, well, you're married and you have kids and you're also gay and you're leaving your wife. Like, well, I mean, it's not a woman. That's like, I mean, if it was a woman, that's normal. What the fuck are you talking about?
Well, this is my favorite part of the character, because it is like, for the first time, he's seeing himself represented in the queer community.
Yes.
And that
exactly.
the excitement that he feels the moment that he realizes, like, he knows the space. He's not playing any games around Hank. It's very clear he's gay. They're all gay. So the moments that they're like low-key flirting, this resonance of like, big air quotes, normal straight guy, but they can still like suck dicks later, like that whole joy that he's starting to feel. And I just love it because, again, in that room when he does say like Hank is actually very handsome, there is sort of the peeking out of the closet a little bit, like, hey, the just tiptoeing and saying, hey, maybe, but then again he catches himself and it's like, oh, but but I'm not like a fag. I'm not like a fairy. I'm not like this. And also, actually, you know what? Fuck gay people. Like he like doubles down real quick, and then Michael's like, okay, this is like really fun for me. And he's like, yeah, okay, fuck it, fine. What are we? What am I? What do you think is happening here? Who do you think we are? And it just, Alan lives in this fantasy of what is quote unquote normal. So much so, like, he buoys himself to Hank. Like, in that moment, he's like, okay, Hank, let's go. Like, that is so out of nowhere. Like, they're at this party. He just met this man, and he's like, I'm leaving. Hank, come with me. And you're like, what? You don't know this person. Like, what an interesting line, because it is so clear, like, he has attached himself to this man because of the visibility of it. Like, I see myself in him. That is like me. Maybe we can be together in this
and
moment
I'm going
of
to
like,
save him from these people that
yeah. And there's like that moment of desperation, it feels like, with him, like trying to like, maybe this is the night that I come out. Maybe this is what's happening, and maybe he's the one who's going to help me do it. And then that's when it's like, no, stop being this coward about it. Tell him you're not roommates. Like, break this facade of heteronormativity. Alan is not saying it. Alan knows it, but he doesn't want to say it, because when you say it, it's real. So for him, he's still like in that fantasy. So it's just like, yeah, tell him. It's like, yeah, we're lovers. And he's like, no, like, don't say it out loud. No, like, we can smooch later, but like, don't say it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the moment he says it, it's like the whole world, this illusion of himself is shattered, because like, he's not out. So this one person he is identifying with so strongly at literally every point is like, I'm just like you, and I'm gay. And he's like, no, that can't be me. And it just like doubles down on that panic that he has for coming out. And I mean, this is all after the hit and all that stuff.
So I kind of don't really give a shit about Alan as a character, because I'm just like,
Yeah.
totally.
The person that is most interesting to me within that dynamic is Hank, because of the allure that he feels towards this straight man. Like, oh, he thinks I'm passing and I'm acceptable. I need to maintain this facade for him.
Yes.
And like all of the tension that causes. And even though he's pissing off the one person there that he loves, he is alienating and pissing off. It doesn't matter, because he's getting the approval from the heterosexual in the room.
Yes, he's doing the like, oh, thank you for calling me straight. Like, oh yeah, I'm a beer drinker. Like, all of these just like weird, silly little stereotypes. He's not dancing. He's not performing any of this. He is fucking swimming in the validation of heteronormativity here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that works really well to like show his struggle to change his lifestyle from like, after being a straight person, you know, a straight passing person for so long, right? Even though he's always had these kind of like feelings, like he lived that life and had a wife and had kids and all of that, and he was still married when he started experimenting, right? And then 2 years ago he left his wife to be with Larry, right? So this is not new by any stretch of the imagination for him, and it's still taking him, like, I mean, how many years, and he's still not where he wants to be, and he's still kind of like pining for the approval of straight people.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that the writer openly is just like, yeah, I'm Michael. This is written after who I am, or who I was at this point in my life. Because, like, I don't know, I feel like me personally, I would be, because like he was 30 when he wrote this, right? He was 31. And so like, this is like peak, like that time. And so it's like, oh my God, like if I wrote something about me and my life being this messy, and like the next day was like, cool, here's a thing about my life. Also, I'm problematic and awful and trash, like self-sabotage, like the whole, like, I mean, like there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. But like me now, like I would have a hard time owning up to that until years later.
Yeah, true.
Well, there is because it depends how you're looking at that character, right? Like, he might have, no, maybe I can't justify this, but like he might have been looking at it as like this kind of cynical, worldly person that was standing outside of the friend group and not recognizing that actually he was a douchebag.
Sure. Maybe he wrote it after he realized the harm and like what a problematic
Yeah.
asshole that he was being. So that is true.
Which could be therapeutic for him, right? Getting that version of himself on a page and out of his own mind could have been a form of therapy.
And a big
him.
old apology to all of his friends
Yeah.
that he did all of that too.
Be like, oh, no, I know I was bad. Look, I get it. I'm different now, but I get it. I will also say, I mean, overall, I did like how they did this, but yeah, I don't know how are we feeling? Do we have more to say?
Yeah, I guess the ending is far more hopeful in the 2020 version than it is in the 1970 version, and
Yes,
I hate it.
I agree. I know.
I didn't like it either.
I know that like there is sort of a call to be like, oh, like sad queer trope of like hopelessness, death, and just lifelong depression. Cool. But in this, I did not need these little vignettes. Like, why the fuck is he running down the alleyway? That it means nothing to me. Like, go
Also,
away.
The performance felt
was
felt not as impactful. Like, I mean, like the first the first movie, that performance is incredible. Just seeing him just break the fuck down in like this very, like, I was like in it. I was like, this is it. This is this. But like this one, I was like, I don't know. It felt so watered down and it felt so disingenuous.
Because the closing of a door is such a good detail. It's such a good final moment. Like the finality of a door closing, both an allegory and an earnest actuality in the play. Like it means so many different things. And it's the perfect way to close a story because it's a story that's taking place in this room. He's leaving the room. The door closes. Play over. Boom. So cutting to all of these little moments, it's like, you're cheapening the intention of this. Like, why are we seeing him at church? That offers nothing to us. Why are we seeing him in the alleyway running? That offers nothing to us. Is he running away from problems? I don't care because we don't need to know this. Like seeing Alan again, why? Like, I don't want to see him
and
drinking
then
at a bar.
Bernard and Emery in the coffee shop, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
We don't need that. Like, is it just like this one moment and then life goes on? It's like, well, we know life goes on. Like, you don't.
The first one felt more cyclical.
Cheapened.
Like the first one was like, okay, like we just went through this whole big traumatic thing, and then he asked Donald, "Will I see you tomorrow?" Right? And Harold says, "I will call you tomorrow." Right? And so like there's this understanding that it's not a good ending, but it just continues. Like they're continuing this cycle. This is just how these people exist, right? And in the other one, it's just it wasn't as meaningful.
It wasn't. No, I also hated it. It was not a good.
I guess, yeah. I just like the most problematic for me was Michael's because it was so stereotypical. Like, I'm going to church, I'm resolving my sins. Now I'm running into the night. Like, oh, fuck off.
Yeah, that's the Ryan Murphy jumped out in those sequences.
It took 2 hours, but he got there.
Oh my god, literally. Ugh. Yeah, we see his little stamp. Like, I'm gonna come in and I'm gonna change the ending. Boop. What if he ran into the night like wild gays do? Like, shut up, Ryan Murphy. Go away. It's so boring. I'm so bored of you. Yeah.
I have questions for the both of you.
Perfect.
If I were to thrust a telephone into your face and say you have to call the one person that you love and tell them that you love them and give some arbitrary point system around it, who would you ring?
Ooh. I thought you were going to say, would you do it? And I was like,
same.
If I was drunk and 18, absolutely. And messy. I'm
gonna have a very boring answer. It would be Eric. Yeah.
Aww.
Because there literally is no other person who I would call for this. Like,
oh, okay. I just have no idea who I would ring.
Because I haven't had that many like loves of my life. I've had a lot of like lovely, passionate sex with strangers, but nobody that I've been like, I'm in love with. Like, you know what I mean? Because that's like a different thing. And so Eric's the one person that I would be like, oh yeah, for sure. He's the one I'd call with like without hesitation. I'd be like, yeah, I'll get fucking 10 points right now. Call me. Like, what? let's go. Like, I win the game.
I feel like my answer would also be really boring because it is the same where I would call my husband as I think I mentioned to you, Kay, where like I recently have been like, oh yeah, you know what? I think I am bisexual. And I think like this is, and I just don't really talk about it because I haven't like, as a woman that is married to a straight man in a straight passing relationship, and this, I'm like, well, I don't know how much I can like actually think or explore any of that. But like really, like when I think about like my husband being my person, it is because really we've done just a lot of trauma bonding together, and through my experiences growing up and like my journey, especially over the past 10 years, I can't think of anybody else that has been there so fundamentally for me. In like, sure, in terms of like friendship and things like that, like I do have those, but like as a lover, as somebody that has seen all of me and met me at my literal worst. And also like, I mean, I have been in mostly straight relationships, but like the only man that has not like really been emotionally manipulative or that has not sexually assaulted me. Like, I mean, these are things that like, I don't know, there's a lot to it, but like my husband being the one person that really showed me what it means to love and be loved and love unconditionally. He was the one that saw me in that moment. It was like, no, you are wonderful and you are worth so much. And like, he helped me to see the good things about myself just by being a good person to me.
This is
So,
all
very
far too
boring.
emotionally healthy. I'm sorry.
I know.
This is not the kind of response I wanted.
You wanted messy, chaotic queerness. Wait, so you were saying you wouldn't know who you would call?
No, I don't know who. Like, if it was that kind of situation where, Michael, who's my douchebag friend, who is like, you need to rank someone and I'm going to give you points. And like, I don't even know what the prize is. Did he say what the prize was? That might raise the stakes a bit.
You know what might be a funner answer for Eric and I? In our, not current day us, but like 21 us, like early 20s us, who would be the one person to call then? Because that's when I was hella messy.
Ooh, ew, yeah. Ooh, I don't think I had anybody at that time.
I don't know. I don't know.
I was
now
so...
that
I was
now
so
that I'm like...
I was so lonely.
Okay, well, so if someone just rang you out of the blue and was like, hey, on a Saturday night, and was like, hey, it's me, I love you.
Yeah.
How would you respond?
I would ask if they're okay, and I would like earnestly give them a response and be like if it's been years.
Is someone paying you to ring me and say this?
Is this like, are you pranking me? Are you recording this? Like, this seems so out of character and strange. I would ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, I would say, okay, thank you. I'm very flattered, and I feel like this has happened to me maybe because nobody fucking calls each other anymore, right? It's all text messaging and it's all DMing and stuff, but like I feel like this has happened to me a couple times, and every time I'm like, well, that's great. Or like, back when we used to know each other, I mean, like maybe that could have been a thing, but and I've struggled being in that moment because I'm like, 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 why are you coming and saying this to me now? Why?
It's hard. It's very difficult to like navigate that in a way that's like, wait, what is this? What is happening? Yeah.
What about you? Okay, so who would you call?
I don't know. Is there anyone that I have that unresolved? I'm just going to like wimp out of answering that. If someone rang me though, I would just be like, okay, bye.
Yeah. You would be the dentist. You would be the dental,
hang up.
Emery's love. Yeah.
Oh, I don't think I'd be as harsh as hanging up. I'd pretend that I was having signal problems.
Oh my God. Okay, so we made it back from 1970s New York.
Woo!
First, let's talk about Boys in the Band, 1970. Eric, who was that movie for?
The gays. It's for the gays. It is a gay movie who is for the gays and gay people living their gay little lives in New York City. It's gay. Okay, who do you think it was for?
Yeah, definitely anyone who's a mo. I wonder if it was also to see whether heterosexuals would be like up for that kind of thing.
Yeah, right? It seems like it's such an earnestly gay story. It's like, it is so gay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Kind of
But
like testing the waters to see
Yeah.
if they're...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jess, who do you think it was for?
I think you're both right. I think that's really good. And I think that the inclusion of Alan in the first film was maybe part of that testing the waters, but definitely in the second one, I feel like his inclusion was, and maybe this is getting into the next question, but like his inclusion was absolutely so straight people can maybe project a little bit onto him or like make something more, I don't know. It felt like Alan had more of a presence in the second one and his feelings had more space than they did in the first one. That's what I think. Did you like it, Eric?
I really liked it. I'll probably watch it again. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a fantastic story. Tension again, so good. I think it's a great, I would love to see this on stage. Like, what a gorgeous stage play this would be. Like, yeah, I really liked it. What do you think, Kay? Did you like it?
Yes, I really liked it. I think that because it was so faithful, I mean, I'm assuming it was so faithful to the play.
Yeah.
It felt, I haven't seen the play, but it felt just like a play. So there were some bits where I was a bit like, oh, can you just shut up? Like, because they were doing the monologue thing. But despite that, I loved it.
Yeah.
Jess, what do you think?
100%. I had no expectations going to this, and I was so fucking thrilled to watch this because I mean, we talk about, most of the films that we review are all centering straight white men. And how there's very little films that even when they say that they are centering the woman or centering the person of color or centering queerness, they are still centering the straight white man. And so for this to be so like right out of the get-go, just so fucking unapologetically gay and like this wonderful nuanced representation of like so many different types of queer men and so many like, you know, that none of them are the same and none of them fit into like this little box. They are all so complex with their own motivations and their own personalities and their own wants and desires. And so it was really nice to not just see like this, which I think is credited with being the first major like production that centers open queerness, but also to see it be such a wonderfully nuanced version of that. And not just like a Hollywood like, oh look, we're all gay and we're doing, you know, like not just being like that. I feel like that was just that's really great and really important. And I feel like this really definitely opened up a lot of doors for queer cinema and queer theater. So yeah, I loved this and everybody should watch this movie.
Agreed.
Eric, so let's move over to the 2020 version. Was this version new, interesting, or the same? Was it progressive, regressive? How are you feeling?
I think it was progressive just in terms of the way that they tried to acknowledge a little bit of the racism and sort of the needless sort of like racial humor aspect from the first one. But overall, I mean, it's like a little new, but overall exactly the same thing. I mean, different pacing, different way to tell the story visually, but it's nearly the exact same script. So I would say it's a little progressive, but also it is the same. What do you think, Kay? How do you feel about it?
Well, I'm going to say it felt like a passion project of Ryan Murphy's.
Yes.
And it felt as though they could have done more with it. And by more, I'm not actually sure what I mean, because I am one of those people who gets pissed off if they change the original text too much. So I would have been like unhappy either way. But it does feel Like, they could have just pushed it a little more. And, like, if they were trying to maybe bring a modern lens to the story, they could have altered bits of it or done something a bit different. As it is, it feels like, why bother?
Yeah.
Although that's not to
100%.
say I didn't enjoy it. I did enjoy it, but it's also just like, well, what's the point?
Yeah. I
Yeah.
feel I get that too. What do you think, Jess?
Oh,
How do you
no, I
feel
was
in
going to
that?
do that. It's me who has to handle
Oh,
it.
no, you go. Okay, sorry.
What about you, Jess? What do you reckon?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad you asked, Kay. I feel exactly like you do. I think largely it was the same text with like some different tonal aspects, and I'm not sure that it was changed enough to really bring, like you were saying, that modern lens to it. It did feel kind of like a fanboy movie for the original, which is great. But and this is something that Eric and I talk on the pod a lot about, but when you are rebooting something or redoing something or doing a sequel 20 years later or something, you have an opportunity to elevate the story and to change certain things. And will people be pissed off about it? Sure. But like also you have this, I feel like there is kind of a duty to like do something, because if you're just shot for shot making the same thing line for line with like the same people, what's the point? Like why are you doing this like when like you have nothing to say that hasn't already been said? So it really did feel like a passion project. It was new in terms of like the way that they were, like some of those vibe shifts, right?
Yeah.
But like by and large and like I guess like some of the shooting techniques, but that also pulled me out of it. So like it felt like the ways that they were being progressive was great, but like it left me wanting something different than what I got.
Yeah. I get that.
And I think that that's what the first one did better, honestly.
Yeah.
But counter argument, the first one had 0 flaccid penises.
That's true.
Very
And
true.
canonically on the pod, we are pro soft wiener. So, you give and take. Nobody's perfect.
So having said that, Eric, who was this movie for?
Oh, Ryan Murphy gays. Just Ryan Murphy gays. 100%. Kay, who do you think this was for?
The boffins at Netflix that paid too much money for Ryan Murphy to exclusively produce things for them. Jess, who do you think this was for?
I think this was a little bit more for straight people than the other one. I think, yes, it was a passion project, but I do feel like the ways that it centered Hank and Alan a little bit more felt like it was more of like a welcoming of like, hey, straight people, watch this movie. Like, let's talk about this. Like, so that's what I mean is it's like it was to bring that audience in a little bit more, I think. But I mean, it was still for Ryan Murphy. Eric, did you like it?
I did.
Yes.
I like the first one more, but I did like it. I liked it enough. Kay, what do you think? Did you like it?
You know how we said before about indifference is worse than hate?
Yeah.
I liked it enough. Yeah.
I mean, I liked it enough.
I feel the same. I'm somewhere between whelmed and very into it. How about you, Jess?
I get that.
Yeah, it was fine. It was there. It was good. But like after having watched the first one, I'm like, I feel like just so many things worked better. And I was into like, okay, cool. Like, let's do some, I thought the dance numbers were a little bit cuter. I was like, cool, this is great. But like, overall, I was like, I don't know. It was good. It was fine. It was there, but it wasn't like, just watch the first one. You don't need this
It was
one.
largely pointless. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So
I think we've done it. We've gotten to the end of the episode. Kay, is there anything you want to plug while you're here for our gorgeous, gorgeous audience?
Well, as you mentioned at the top of the show, I have a podcast called Lost Spaces, and it is about lost queer venues, but mostly it's about the people who got sucked off within them. And every week I talk to different people about their coming out journeys, how having access to the queer community has helped shape who they are and their journey. And I get their gossip from a part of their life that they thought that they'd forgotten. And I might have a special guest coming up that your listeners will know already.
Yes.
OMG.
You may hear me on that podcast at some point in the next few. Or
Oh, no, I
if
meant
you're hearing
Jess.
this. If you're hearing this, you'll probably be hearing me very soon. So you'll go look it up. It'll be out when this is out. What a treat. I love doing the show. It's going to be great. Kay, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. I know we talked ad nauseum about gayness, but what a joy. What a treat. It's been really fun.
Yes, no, yeah, it's been really fun for me. Thank you. I've never watched the same film twice.
Yes.
Like so quickly after it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you again. We really appreciate you and your time. Also, yeah, Lost Spaces, please check it out. It is wonderful and such a treat to listen to. Anyways, thank you so much, everybody, for listening.
Please don't forget to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on all of our social media for those likes and those everything. We love attention, so please give us plenty of it.
We also do polls and stuff like that. So, like, I mean, if you have difference of opinion or if you want to make your opinion known, get at
Let's
us.
argue.
Let's do it. We love it.
DM us.
Our artwork and music is by Eric Lefebvre. Editing is by Danny Barkley. And thank you again for listening. And thank you, Eric and Kay.
Thank you, Jess and
Thank
Kay.
you.
And remember, stay
I don't know why I
cute.
waved.
And stay critical.
Bye.
Bye. This podcast has been brought to you by the NOTstalgia Network.
Visit the NOTstalgiaNetwork.com for more.
Avatar: The Last Airbender is more than just a show.
It's a conversation of growth,
Of trauma.
Of culture.
of intention.
And of change.
The Momos and the Appas is a weekly conversational podcast from the NOTstalgia Network dedicated to discussing the Avatar universe as folklore, episode by episode.
I'm Eric Lefebvre.
I'm Dr. Amber Jones.
And I'm Jessica Tercero. Join us weekly as we dig into all things Avatar and Korra, including Uncle Iroh's hot bod versus his war criminal history.
Avatar Aang's well-meaning cultural revisionism versus Zuko's performance of toxic masculinity.
How ultimately Katara is the savior and the hero of the story.
Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the NOTstalgiaNetwork.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.